The rain hung over the sea like a thick gray wall. The waves crashed furiously against the lonely, dilapidated hut on the cliff, and an icy wind whistled inside. On the rotten floor, wrapped in a thin, dirty blanket, lay 11-year-old Harry Potter. His fingers were numb with the cold. Dudley was asleep on the only council-worthy sofa, snoring loudly, while Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia were locked in the upstairs room. Harry looked at Dudley's glowing watch, hanging from his thick wrist. 11:59. In a minute he would be 11. He had spent his whole life in a dark cupboard under the stairs, kicked, scolded, and ignored. Tonight he just wanted to wish himself a quiet, happy birthday. 12:00. Happy birthday, Harry, he whispered to himself in the darkness. At that very moment, a terrible crash shook the entire rock. Boom. The door of the hut shook. Dudley jumped from his sleep with a loud crunch. Uncle Vernon came flying down from above, flashlight and rifle in hand, his face terrified but angry. "Who's there?" Vernon shouted. "I'm warning you, I'm armed." Boom, the door gave way. The hinges broke with a terrible crunch, and the door simply fell to the floor. A huge man entered the room, his head bowed to avoid hitting the ceiling. His hair and beard were long and matted, and his eyes were like two black beetles under his eyebrows. The giant leaned over, lifted the door slightly, and put it back in its frame as if it were made of cardboard. The wind died down in an instant. He turned to the Dursleys. "You could offer me a cup of tea, it's been a long journey," the giant said, and then he saw Dudley huddled on the sofa. "Hello, Harry, you've grown a lot since I last saw you. Your belly is so big." Dudley was almost speechless with fear. "I am not Harry," he mumbled, hiding behind his father. The real Harry, with his broken glasses and oversized clothes, emerged timidly from the dark corner. "I'm Harry," he said. The giant turned, his stern face softening instantly, a broad smile spreading across his lips. "Of course you are. And I was wondering where you were hiding. I have something for you. I may have squeezed it a little on the journey, but it should taste good." He pulled a slightly flattened box from his huge pocket. Harry opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a large, sticky chocolate cake with the words, "Happy Birthday, Harry," written on it in green icing. Harry looked at the giant. Tears welled up in his eyes. No one had ever given him a cake in his life. "Thank you," he whispered. "And who are you?" "Oh, that's right, I didn't introduce myself." The giant laughed, clapping his hands together so that the whole room shook. "Ruby Hagrid, keeper of the keys and grounds of Hogwarts. Well, you know all about Hogwarts, of course." Harry was taken aback. "No, I'm sorry, I don't know." Hagrid froze. His eyes widened in fury, and he turned to Uncle Vernon, who was standing in the corner with a rifle. "You don't know," roared Hagrid. "You didn't tell him. You mean this boy, Lily and James' son, doesn't know anything about his own world." "Shut up," shouted Uncle Vernon, trying to look brave even though his hands were shaking. "I forbid you to say anything to him. We promised when we took him in that we would knock that nonsense out of his head." "Knock it out." Hagrid took a step forward, and Uncle Vernon immediately backed away. "You pathetic rascals, you tried to stop Harry Potter. Harry, you're a wizard. And not just any wizard, you'll be one of the best. And Albus Dumbledore himself promised to personally watch and teach you." Harry felt his head spin. A wizard, him. "You're wrong," Harry said quietly. "I can't be a wizard, I'm just Harry, nobody likes me." "You mean nothing strange ever happened to you when you were angry or scared?" Hagrid blinked. Harry remembered in an instant how his hair had grown back, how he had ended up on the school roof running from Dudley's zebra, and how he had released a boa constrictor at the zoo. It all suddenly made sense. Hagrid pulled a thick yellow envelope from the inside pocket of his coat, addressed to Harry. Harry took it and read, "Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry." Uncle Vernon was suddenly furious. He ran over to Harry and tore the letter open. "He's not going anywhere. We're not paying for some old madman to teach him tricks." Hagrid grabbed Uncle Vernon's rifle, tore it in half in an instant, like it was plasticine, and threw it into the corner. "Never," hissed Hagrid, making the room heat up. "Don't insult Albus Dumbledore in front of me." Dudley had begun to secretly eat Harry's birthday cake. Hagrid saw this, pulled out his pink umbrella, pointed it at Dudley's bottom, and shouted. There was a male, a flash of purple light, and Dudley started running around the room screaming. A real, curly pig's tail had grown out of his trousers. Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon screamed in terror, grabbed Dudley, and locked him in the top bunk. In the bar, Hagrid lowered his umbrella and, looking a little embarrassed, adjusted his beard. Well, please don't tell anyone about this at Hogwarts. I'm not officially allowed to use magic. But anyway, it's time for us, Harry. Diagon Alley is waiting. We need to buy your wand and books. Dumbledore wants us to be perfectly prepared for everything. Harry smiled broadly for the first time in his life. He put on his huge jacket, looked at the hut where he had left his old life, and followed the giant into the stormy night. The 1st of September brought a completely different kind of noise. The steam from the locomotive rose all the way to the glass ceiling of the platform, and the hooting of owls and the bustle of hurrying students echoed around him. Harry, with the help of the helpful Weasley family, successfully crossed the secret wall to platform 9 3/4. He finally found an empty train compartment, pushed his heavy suitcase inside, and leaned back in his seat, watching the wizards hurry by through the window. Soon the compartment door gently opened. The same freckled, red-haired boy from the platform peered timidly inside. Is this available? The boy asked, gesturing to the seat in front of him. Everywhere else is already full. Yes, it's available. Sit down, Harry smiled. The redhead sighed heavily, falling onto the soft bench, and studied Harry curiously for a few seconds. Then he held out his hand. I'm Ron Weasley. Harry Potter. Ron's eyes widened so much that they almost fell out of their sockets. He opened his mouth and snorted a few times. Really? Ron exclaimed, but immediately felt embarrassed and lowered his voice to a whisper. So you, well, you know, have that. Harry pushed his unruly black hair back, exposing his forehead. A thin, lightning-shaped scar was clearly visible on it. Wow, Ron muttered, looking at the scar as if it were a miracle. So it's true, you really do remember how he who must not be mentioned. I just remember a lot of green light and nothing else, Harry shrugged. And your whole family is wizards. What? Oh, yes, I suppose, said Ron, looking a little sad. I got all my older brother's old things, even this rat. Her name is Toby. She is completely useless, just sleeping. As they chatted, the train jerked and slowly began to move out of the station. Just then, the compartment door opened again. Another first-year boy stepped inside. He was carrying a heavy suitcase, and in his hands was a strange metal ball, engraved with silver lines and ancient runes. The new boy smiled amiably. Hello, will you accept another passenger? He asked, setting his things down on the table. It's absolutely impossible to get through the seniors in the corridor. Sure, sit down, said Harry, moving closer to the window. The boy sat down opposite them, and Ron immediately stared at the mysterious ball. What is this? Asked the freckled wizard curiously. It's a wizarding astrolabe, the newcomer explained, carefully adjusting the device. My uncle found it while traveling in Egypt. If you turn the rings just right, it can show the direction of magical currents or simply predict when the best time of night will be to observe the stars. Sometimes it starts to glow green when there's something dangerous nearby, but for now, thankfully, it's quiet. I'm Leo, by the way. Nice to meet you. Ron shook his hand first. I'm Ron Weasley, and this, he hissed mysteriously and nodded at Harry, this is Harry Potter. Leo froze for a moment, realizing who was sitting in front of him. However, unlike the other wizards, who were simply pressing their foreheads against his, Leo smiled broadly and shook Harry's hand enthusiastically. Unbelievable, said Leo. Very nice, Harry. It seems like this year at Hogwarts is going to be incredible if we're all in the same compartment from the very first day. Harry felt relieved. Leo's reaction was genuine and friendly. I'm glad too, Harry replied. I only learned about magic a couple of weeks ago, so it's all new to me. When Harry admitted that he felt completely green, Leo leaned a little closer and said mysteriously, Don't worry about it, Harry. In fact, I've heard adults say that Professor Albus Dumbledore himself is personally interested in your arrival. Rumor has it that he's not just watching you, he wants to prepare you for something great. With the most powerful wizard of the age at your back, you'll learn 10 times faster than all of us put together." Harry was confused, his cheeks turning a little red from the attention. "Dumbledore," Ron hissed, almost rolling his eyes again. "The headmaster of Hogwarts himself. Leo, you're kidding. My dad says Dumbledore is the only one you know who was ever afraid of." "I'm serious, Ron," Leo assured him calmly. "You'll see, this year will be completely different." Their conversation was interrupted by a soft clatter in the corridor. The door swung open again, revealing a smiling woman with a large trolley full of the strangest wizarding treats. "Would you like something sweet, kids?" she asked sing-songly. Ron looked down sadly and pulled a flattened sandwich bag from his pocket. "No thanks, I've got mine," he muttered. "Mum put it back with the beef. She always forgets I don't like it." Harry, remembering the heavy, pleasant-sounding mass of scrotum in his pocket, jumped up from his seat. "We'll have a little bit of everything," Harry shouted happily, handing the woman a handful of gold galleons. A few minutes later, the table between the three of you was bursting with treats. Bertie Bott's beans in all flavors, chocolate frogs, and exploding sweets. "Wow, Harry, you're a treasure," Ron exclaimed, instantly grabbing the chocolate frog. "Leo, have some too, look, there's those beans. Just be careful, my brother said he had once tasted rotten eggs." Leo laughed and picked up one of the red beans, hopping it with strawberries and not chili. Harry was curiously examining the chocolate frog wrapper. "They can't run, can they?" Harry asked, but before Ron could answer, the frog had jumped out of the box and stuck itself to the window pane. "Oh, they only have one good jump," Ron waved his hand. "Look, what card you got?" Harry turned over the gold bottom of the wrapper. An old man with a long silver beard, half-moon glasses, and a long, knobby nose stared out at the boy. "That's Albus Dumbledore," Harry said, reading the note. Leo leaned closer to look at the card. Just then, the image of Dumbledore on the card winked at Harry, smiled, and simply disappeared, leaving only an empty frame. Then the first exercise, when something in the office suddenly changed. Leo's wrist began to burn violently. The blue rune that had appeared in his dream suddenly shone so brightly that its light soaked through the fabric of his robes. At that very moment, all the silver devices in the office fell silent. The candles flickered, and the heavy vibration of the foundations shook the entire room. The walls around them began to whisper softly with hundreds of ancient voices. Leo felt that his own voice no longer belonged to him. His eyes lit up for a moment with the blue flame of the castle, and he spoke in a deep, resonant voice, the voice of Hogwarts itself, directly into Dumbledore's face. "Refuse to teach Leo, Albus Dumbledore. This child does not belong in your chess game. History has changed. You have nothing to teach him because I have a better alternative for him. I will teach him everything he needs. Your knowledge, Albus, is for the boy with the lightning scar. Prepare Harry, and Leo will be my apprentice." Harry jumped up from his chair in fright, looking at Leo. The phoenix fox spread its wings and screamed loudly. Professor Dumbledore's face instantly lost its calm expression. His eyes widened in surprise, and the hand holding his wand trembled for a second. He understood who was speaking through the boy. Hogwarts Castle, a living, 1,000-year-old magical organism for the first time in its history, directly rejected the will of the headmaster and chose its own apprentice, clearly drawing its boundaries. A few seconds later, the light in Leo's eyes went out, the rune on his wrist cooled, and the boy sighed heavily, falling back into his chair. The instruments began to whistle again. Dumbledore stared at Leo for a long time, his gaze incredibly serious, full of deep respect and understanding. He slowly lowered his wand, then looked at Harry. "Unbelievable," the headmaster muttered quietly, taking a deep breath. "The castle itself, it chose you, Leo, and she was right. My methods are for mortals, and it protects the deep magic of the land itself and the 4 founders. If Hogwarts has decided to teach you itself, I have no right to interfere. But her will is clear, our lessons with you, Harry, remain valid. You will need my knowledge, my strategy, and what I have accumulated over the years. And you, Leo, will go your own way. Harry and I will start next week. Now go back to your tower." Harry and Leo, still shaken by what had happened, said their goodbyes hastily and left the office. The gargoyle closed behind them. "Leo, what was that?" Harry whispered excitedly as they hurried along the empty corridors towards Gryffindor Tower. "You were not speaking in your own voice." Dumbledore looked completely stunned. "But I'm glad he's still teaching me. I really need his knowledge to understand what's going on with my scar." "It's a castle, Harry," Leo replied quietly, still feeling the energy in his body. "She said she'd teach me everything. You'll learn from the most powerful wizard of the age, and I'll learn from the oldest walls. Together we'll be unstoppable." As they reached the 7th floor and were approaching the corridor leading to the fat lady's portrait, the castle walls suddenly began to move. The stone blocks in front of them slowly shifted to the sides, forming a brand new, never-before-seen arched doorway. Above the door, a blue-glow inscription immediately spilled out of the stone. "Leo's room." Harry and Leo looked at each other. Leo touched the handle, and the door quietly opened. As they stepped inside, their breath caught. It was a huge, secret room, created by the castle itself specifically for Leo's training. In the center of the room stood a full set of training equipment, dozens of wooden dummies for practicing combat magic, which moved on their own and imitated the movements of duels. Along the walls stretched huge shelves, laden with ancient books that were not even in the restricted section of the Hogwarts library books on elemental control, ancient runes and wordless magic. In the center of the room, on a large stone table, lay an open ancient parchment, on which the first lessons began to be written in blue writing. The inscription read, "First lesson, Leo, Earth and Stone Sense. The castle is an extension of your wand." "Wow," Harry said, examining the moving dummies. "Leo, this is incredible. This place is just for you. You will become the lord of the castle while I sit in Dumbledore's office and theorize." "We must keep this room a secret, Harry," Leo said seriously, closing the door, which from the outside had turned back into a simple stone wall. "Not even Ron and Hermione must know about this. Dumbledore will prepare you, and Hogwarts will prepare me." The Golden Trio remained the axis of their lives. The next day they sat in the Great Hall with Ron and Hermione again, doing their daily homework and laughing at Ron's jokes. But under this ordinary mask, a double preparation was already hidden. Harry was waiting for his first lesson with Dumbledore, and Leo returned to his secret room at night, where the stones themselves taught him to control magic that could shake the world. Night enveloped Hogwarts in blinding darkness, and the huge windows of the castle reflected only the cold moonlight. Harry and Leo parted quietly on the 3rd floor. Harry took a deep breath, spoke the password to the gargoyle, and went upstairs to his first private lesson with Albus Dumbledore. The headmaster was wasting no time tonight. He sat Harry down in front of an ancient silver vessel filled with glowing thoughts, the pool of memories, and began to teach the boy the profound theories of magical bonding and mind protection, so that Voldemort could not use his scar. Meanwhile, Leo quickly climbed to the 7th floor. As soon as he approached the right place, the stone wall immediately came to life, creaked and formed a graceful arched door. The glowing inscription, "Leo's room," briefly flashed with bluish fire and went out as the boy stepped inside. The secret chamber looked even more impressive than the first time. An old, powerful energy hung in the air, and the parchment lying on the large stone table was already written with new, bluish lines. The castle decided that Leo would have to overcome more than one challenge this night. First, the stone mannequins in the center of the hall began to move towards Leo. The parchment lying on the table glowed, and Leo's deep words rang out in his head. "Feel me, I am your shield," Aegislap hit him. Leo reached out his hand without a word. The rune on his wrist jingled, and right in front of him, a thick, solid stone wall rose from the floor of the hall with a terrible crash, instantly crumbling into dust under the impact of the mannequins, but completely protecting the boy. This was his first defensive stone shield spell. But the castle did not stop there. On the other side of the wave of mannequins, Leo saw how the ancient books on the shelves began to turn by themselves, and glowing symbols rose from their pages. This was the second lesson, Igni's Lightning, a spell that combines the element of fire with lightning speed. Leo aimed his wand at the farthest target, and from its tip shot not an ordinary spark, but a blind, bluish arrow of fire, which instantly turned the wooden mannequin to ashes. Finally, a deathly silence fell over the hall, and blue threads rose from the floor and wrapped themselves around Leo's body. On the stone table, completely new, incredible symbols began to appear on the parchment, depicting animal silhouettes. Your magic must be free from the boundaries of the human body. The voice of the castle itself hissed in Leo's soul. We begin your transformation. You will become an animagus, not through years and the observation of scoundrels, but through my being. Feel your true animal. Leo closed his eyes, feeling his senses sharpen and his heartbeat slow down, gradually adapting to the rhythm of some mysterious, powerful creature, the form of which the castle had already begun to forge in his soul. This was the beginning of a long and secret transformation. However, Leo did not have time to fully immerse himself in this feeling. Suddenly, the blue threads on his wrist began to burn terribly and pulse with a red, dangerous light. The entire hall of the Chamber of Secrets trembled. The stones on the wall began to change shape, showing Leo a view from the other side of the castle, the girls' bathroom on the first floor. In the vision, Leo saw a huge, scary, gray creature with a giant club in its hands. A troll. It broke the bathroom door with a bang, and in the corner, cowering behind a broken sink, Hermione screamed in fear. At the same time, Leo felt Harry running up the stairs from Dumbledore's office, whom the headmaster had hastily released after the danger spells had been activated throughout the castle. Harry had not foreseen that Hermione would be the one in the bathroom. Leo realized that there was no time. The spells he had learned, Stone Shield and Firebolt, were to be tested in real war. The boy turned and ran out of his secret room, and the stone wall closed behind him, ready for the great clash on the first floor. Leo ran out of his secret room, and the stone wall behind him instantly flattened. He started running down the moving stairs, which, sensing the rush of the castle student, instantly turned in the right direction. On the first floor, Leo saw a frightened Harry, who had just rushed out of Dumbledore's office. "Leo," Harry shouted, his face pale. The headmaster felt that someone had broken into the castle. The professors ran to the dungeons, but I heard. A terrible crash and the shattering of glass from the girls' toilet interrupted his words. Hermione's horrifying scream came from behind the door. "She's still there," Ron shouted, his wand in his hand, his face full of panic. "It's all because of what I said." Leo didn't wait a second. He pushed the toilet door open and stepped inside, Harry and Ron following bravely behind him. The sight was terrifying. The enormous gray troll, almost 4 meters tall, had already smashed half the sinks with its terrible club. Hermione, trembling, was cowering under one of the remaining partitions as the monster slowly approached her. "Hey, I stink," Ron shouted, throwing a piece of plumbing pipe at the troll to distract him. The troll turned. Its small, dull eyes locked on Harry. The monster let out a terrible roar and raised its enormous wooden club, preparing to crush the boy with the lightning scar in one blow. Harry, remembering Dumbledore's lesson in coolness and concentration, tried to make a defensive move, but the troll was too close, and the blow was too lightning. "Aegis Lapidum," Leo shouted in his mind, without even uttering a single word aloud. The rune on his wrist instantly flared up with bluish fire. In that very second, the stone floor of the toilet cracked loudly under the troll's club, and a thick, monolithic stone wall rose from the ground directly in front of Harry. The club crashed into the rock with a terrible thud. The stones shattered into splinters, raising a huge cloud of dust, but Harry remained completely unharmed. The troll staggered, shaking his injured arm. Leo seized the moment. He took a step forward, his eyes once again lit up with the same mysterious castle fire. He aimed his wand straight at the monster's chest. "Igni's Lightning," Leo hissed. A bolt of blue fire shot from the tip of his wand, flying with the sound of an electric discharge. It crashed directly into the troll. There was a crackle, and the creature was thrown back against the wall, smoke rising from its skin. But at the same time, something happened inside Leo that he had not expected. The animagus transformation that Castle had begun, although not yet fully completed, had reacted to Leo's battle rage and the stress he had experienced. Since his future animagus form was not just any ordinary animal, but a powerful, ancient dragon, this magic manifested itself visually. Behind Leo, in the bluish dust and smoke of fire, a huge, glowing silhouette of a dragon's wings and tail appeared for a second, and his own shadow on the wall briefly took the form of a winged monster. At that moment, Professor Snape burst into the toilet, followed by Professor McGonagall and Quirrell. Snape, who had already been ready to draw his wand, suddenly froze in place. His black eyes widened in pure shock as he saw the dragon's shadow disappearing in the smoke around Leo. The professor was well versed in dark and ancient magic, so he understood instantly what had happened, even though his mind refused to believe it. The first-year boy had the animagus of a dragon, which was already beginning to push outward. The troll, hit by Leo's fire and finally finished off by Harry and Ron, who managed to levitate the club above the monster's head, fell to the floor with a terrible thud, losing consciousness. A deathly silence reigned in the toilet, broken only by Hermione's heavy breathing. Professor McGonagall, all white, looked from the troll to the 4 first-years. What happened here?" she asked in a trembling voice. Hermione quickly emerged from her hiding place. "Professor McGonagall, it's my fault. I went out to look for the troll because I thought I could handle it, and Harry, Ron, and Leo saved me. If it hadn't been for them, I would have died." McGonagall adjusted her glasses, still gasping for breath. "Miss Nosy, 5 points will be deducted from Gryffindor's nest for your irresponsibility. But," she looked at the 3 boys, 10 points each for your incredible courage and luck. Now, quickly go to your tower." Harry, Ron, and Hermione hurried toward the exit, but Snape blocked Leo's path. His gaze was piercing, cold, and incredibly suspicious. He leaned closer to Leo, his voice a barely audible whisper. "Mr. Leo, I saw what happened in the smoke. You are hiding something that goes against the rules of this school. No first-year could control such elements and have such shadows. I will watch you, every step you take." Leo met his gaze calmly, feeling the castle floor warm again beneath his feet, giving him complete peace. He didn't answer, just nodded politely and walked past the professor, joining his friends. On the way back to Gryffindor Tower, Hermione formally thanked all 3 boys, and from that night on, the golden trio with Leo at the forefront became inseparable. The 4 of them sat in the common room by the fireplace, discussing the battle. Ron and Hermione were still reeling from the way Leo had summoned the stone wall, and Harry only winked silently at Leo. Leo sat next to Harry, gently touching his wrist. This manifestation of the dragon's shadow was only the first hint. The castle had already begun to grow something incredibly powerful in his soul, and Leo knew that by the end of his first year, when the time came for the great confrontation, he would be fully trained to become a real, fire-breathing dragon. The months flew by at lightning speed. Spring had come, and with it the great trials. No one knew about Leo's nightly animagus training in the Hall of Secrets until the end of the school year. Even Professor Snape, although he watched Leo's every move in the corridors suspiciously, had no evidence. Leo had learned to perfectly lock his mind with the help of the castle, so Snape's attempts to read his thoughts by legilimency hit an impenetrable stone wall. Leo was making amazing progress in the Hall of Secrets. The very foundation of the castle taught him not only the theory of animagus, but also very complex practical spells at night. Night after night, Leo stood in the center of the hall, surrounded by blue threads, learning moves that no first-year was supposed to know yet. The first spell the castle helped him cast was Aegis Lapidum, the summoning of a stone shield. Leo had to learn not to just wave his wand, but to channel his energy deep into the castle floor, to feel the weight of the trunk and lift it in front of him. At first, only small fragments of rock would jump out of the ground, but after hundreds of attempts, Leo was already able to raise a thick, impenetrable stone wall with a single wave of his hand, without saying a word. The second spell was a combat spell, Igni's Lightning. It was a special magic that combined the thunderous power of fire with lightning speed. The dummies in the secret room moved faster and faster, and Leo had to learn to release arrows of blue fire at the very moment when the dummies tried to attack him. The books on the shelves themselves turned in the air, showing him the correct trajectories of the spells, until Leo's movements became automatic and perfect. And deep in his soul, under the cover of blue threads, the power of the dragon was quietly growing. During each animagus training session, Leo felt his senses become as sharp as a predator's, and in moments of anger or maximum concentration, his eyes would flash with vertical pupils for a second. However, the castle made it clear. It's not time yet. The power of the dragon is too great for this year. You will fully reveal yourself later, when the world is in real danger. Leo waited obediently, and did not reveal himself to anyone. Meanwhile, Harry also did not waste time. His personal lessons with Dumbledore bore incredible fruit. Harry learned to deeply understand magical flows. His defensive spells became lightning fast and incredibly accurate. And most importantly, he mastered the mind defense to such an extent that the pains and visions sent by Voldemort from the scar were completely blocked. Finally, the fateful night of the end of the school year came. The foursome Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Leo discovered that Hagrid had accidentally spilled the secret of how to put Pooh, the three-headed dog guarding the dungeon hatch on the 3rd floor, to sleep. Realizing that someone would try to steal the Philosopher's Stone tonight, they decided to take action themselves. Sliding past the sleeping Pooh, who was dozing off to the sound of an enchanted harp, the 4 of them jumped into the deep, dark hatch. They landed softly on strange, wet plant roots that immediately began to wrap around their legs and drag them deeper. "It's the devil's noose," Hermione cried out in horror. "They like the dark and the damp. We need fire, but I don't have any wood." "You're a witch, Hermione," Ron shouted, the plant already strangling him by the neck. Leo took a step forward. He didn't need any firewood or words. He simply raised his open palm, and the blue rune on his wrist glowed brightly. "Ignes," Leo said quietly in his mind. Using his night training lessons, he burst out of his palm a powerful ring of blue fire that instantly rippled across the entire room. The heat was so intense that the devil's nooses instantly released them all with a terrible hiss and shrank into the darkest corners. Hermione looked at Leo with bulging eyes. She knew the spell Lumos Solemn, but she had never seen such pure, blue elemental fire in any textbook. In the next room, thousands of flying keys and an old broom in the air awaited them. They needed to catch that one old key to open the heavy door. Harry, using his Quidditch Seeker talent and the incredible reaction speed developed in Dumbledore's lessons, jumped onto his broom. As the keys with sharp beaks attacked Harry in the air, Leo pointed his hand upwards. Responding to the will of the castle student, the stone vaults of the room began to change by themselves. They formed silent air vortices that threw the attacking keys to the sides, opening a free path for Harry. Harry instantly grabbed the right key and threw it down to Hermione. In the 3rd room, a giant, living wizard chessboard awaited them. To pass, it was necessary to play a game in which the losing pieces were mercilessly smashed into pieces. Ron Weasley took over the leadership here. His strategic mind, which he had been developing for years, worked flawlessly. At the end of the game, Ron realized that in order to win and let Harry and Leo pass, he had to sacrifice himself. "Ron, no," Harry shouted as the White Queen approached Ron's horse. "It's the only way," Ron yelled. "Harry, you have to keep going. Leo, protect him." The Queen struck Ron's horse with a terrible thud, and the boy fell to the ground, unconscious. Hermione wanted to run to him, but Harry stopped her. "Stay with him, Hermione. Take care of him and call for help. Leo and I are going all the way." Harry and Leo entered the last room. Professor Snape was not there, as they had expected. In the very center, in front of the huge mirror of Desire Heiress, stood the stammering defense against the dark arts teacher, Professor Quirrell. "You," Harry was surprised, "but we thought it was Snape." "Snape," Quirrell laughed coldly, his stutter instantly gone. "Yes, he looks so suspicious, doesn't he? And who would suspect poor, stuttering Professor Quirrell? Snape's been trying to stop me all year, and your friend Leo even managed to block the troll energy I released with the floor during a lesson in the dungeons. A very unusual magic, Mr. Leo. but it won't save you tonight. Quirrell turned to the mirror. How can I get the stone? I see myself holding it, but how do I get it out? Suddenly, from under Quirrell's tuft, a terrible, hissing voice came from under his tuft, making the room feel icy cold. Use the boy, use Potter, he knows. Quirrell turned and waved his wand at Harry. Harry, remembering everything Dumbledore had taught him, controlled his emotions and closed his mind completely. Looking into the mirror, he saw his own reflection, which had put the red stone in his pocket. Harry felt the real stone instantly appear in the pocket of his robes, but his face remained a calm stone mask. Well, what do you see? Hissed Quirrell. I see myself winning the Quidditch Cup, Harry lied calmly. He's lying, a hissing voice screamed. Let me speak to him face to face. Quirky began to roll up his turban. When he turned, Harry and Leo saw a horrible sight. At the back of Quirky's head was another living, snake-like face with red eyes and slits for a nose. Voldemort. Harry Potter, the Dark Lord hissed. See what I've become, only shadow and smoke. I can only live by sharing another's body. But there have always been those who have helped me. Give me the stone in my pocket, and together we will create something great. Never, Harry screamed, backing away. Kill him, Voldemort ordered. Quirky lunged forward, his hands ready to grab Harry by the throat. Harry, armed with Dumbledore's personal lessons, instantly performed a lightning-fast defensive maneuver, directing his wand. As soon as Quirrell's hands touched Harry's skin, something incredible happened. The old magic of Harry's mother's sacrifice reacted, and Quirrell's hands began to burn, turned to ash and split with a terrible scream. However, Voldemort was not so easily defeated. Realizing that Quirrell's body was about to disintegrate, he focused all the remaining dark energy he had. A black, terrible cloud of smoke and darkness with Voldemort's face erupted from the back of Quirrell's head, and with a terrible roar rushed straight at Harry, ready to rip through his body and soul. The blow was so strong that Harry's wand fell from his hands, and the protection of his mind began to crack from the terrible pressure of the darkness. Leo knew his time had come. While the dragon form was still safely waiting for the coming years, all the other magic he had secretly learned from the stones of Hogwarts itself was now about to come out in full force. Leo stepped forward between Harry and the flying black cloud. He took a deep breath, connecting with the very foundation of Hogwarts. Both of his eyes were instantly completely lit with blue elemental fire, and the rune on his wrist was on fire. Direct him, Castle, Leo shouted in his mind. Leo stretched both arms forward. Without using his wand, he deployed the Aegis Lapidum shield he had perfected during the night, but this time it formed no ordinary wall, but a giant, blue-glowing dome of ancient magic that enveloped him and Harry. There was a deafening explosion as Voldemort's dark cloud crashed into this blue shield with a terrible impact. The dark energy and the castle's deep magic collided, creating a wave that shook the walls of the room, and the heavy stone rock beneath their feet began to crack. Voldemort's face widened in the smoke with genuine shock and fury. He sensed that this first-year boy, Leo, was using magic that had its roots in the very founders of Hogwarts magic that Voldemort could neither control nor see through. Bluish fire from Leo's shield began to burn the black smoke, causing the Dark Lord himself to let out a cry of pain. Who are you? Voldemort's spirit roared in the smoke, sensing that this boy would be 10 times more dangerous than anyone else in the future. We'll meet again. Without the strength to pierce Leo's ancient shield and Quirrell, finally reduced to ashes, the black cloud of smoke turned with a terrible hiss and shot out through the ceiling at great speed, leaving the room to slowly sink into silence. Leo dropped his hands, the blue light in his eyes fading, and a sudden, terrible fatigue washed over him. Harry, still shaking but completely healthy, ran to him and grabbed his shoulder. Leo, you stopped him. That was incredible, Harry said, breathing heavily, the red stone resting safely in his hand. You saved us both. We did it together, Harry, Leo smiled weakly, before both boys collapsed exhausted to the floor. A few moments later, Albus Dumbledore himself burst into the room, carrying a glowing wand, but it was all over. The end-of-term celebration in the Great Hall was a moment of triumph. The Gryffindor table was awash with red and gold banners. Dumbledore, standing at the head of the hall, loudly announced the extra points. To Hermione for her cool head, to Ron for the best game of chess in Hogwarts history, to Harry for his incredible courage, and finally his gaze, full of deep knowledge and respect, fell on Leo. And finally, to Mr. Leo, the headmaster said loudly, and silence fell over the entire hall. Professor Snape at the end of the table, he sat incredibly straight, his eyes staring straight at Leo, remembering the night in the bathroom and the stories he had heard from the dungeons. For an incredible, deep sense of magical existence and the protection of friendship that transcends all rules, 60 points to Gryffindor House. The hall erupted in such screams that it seemed as if the enchanted ceiling was about to fall in. Gryffindor House had won the College Cup. Sitting on the Hogwarts Express train home, Leo sat next to Harry, Ron, and Hermione. Ron was still vividly telling the story of how he had been injured by a chess knight, and Hermione was already planning what books she would read over the summer. Leo turned to the window and gently ran his hand across his wrist. The rune pulsed softly under his skin, and deep inside he could feel the calm but powerful beating of a dragon. The first year was over. He had mastered the castle's elements and ancient magic, and his dragon form was safely awaiting its hour. The second year and the Chamber of Secrets were just around the corner, and Leo knew that when the castle once again revealed its darkest secrets, his dragon wings would be ready to spread at the right time. The months flew by. Spring had arrived, and with it the great trials. No one knew about Leo's nightly animagus training in the Chamber of Secrets until the end of the school year. Even Professor Snape, though he watched Leo's every move in the corridors suspiciously, had no evidence. Leo had learned to perfectly lock his mind with the castle, so Snape's attempts to read his thoughts by legilimency hit an impenetrable stone wall. In the Chamber of Secrets, Leo was making astonishing progress. The castle's foundation itself taught him not only the theory of animagus, but also very complex practical spells at night. Night after night, Leo stood in the center of the hall, surrounded by blue threads, and learned moves that no first year should have known yet. The first spell that the castle helped him cast was Aegis Lapidum, the summoning of a stone shield. Leo had to learn not to just wave his wand, but to direct his energy deep into the castle floor, feel the weight of the stone and lift it in front of him. At first, only small fragments of rock jumped out of the ground, but after hundreds of attempts, Leo was able to raise a thick, impenetrable stone wall with a wave of his hand, without saying a word. The second spell was a combat spell, Ignis Lightning. It was a special magic that combined the thunderous power of fire with lightning speed. The dummies in the Chamber of Secrets moved faster and faster, and Leo had to learn to fire arrows of blue fire at the very moment the dummies tried to attack him. The books on the shelves themselves turned in the air, showing him the correct trajectories of spells, until Leo's movements became automatic and perfect. And deep inside his soul, under the cover of blue threads, the power of the dragon was quietly growing. During each animagus training, Leo felt his senses become as sharp as a predator's, and in a moment of anger or maximum concentration, his eyes would flash with vertical pupils for a second. However, the castle made it clear. It's not time yet. The power of the dragon is too great for this year. You will fully reveal yourself later, when the world is in real danger. Leo waited obediently, and did not reveal himself to anyone. Meanwhile, Harry also did not waste time. His personal lessons with Dumbledore bore incredible fruit. Harry had learned to understand the flow of magic, his defensive spells,